Cox slams it down, and Chris Cox makes the Klein go crazy. Cox has the steal. He's going to go up and throw it down. Chris Cox, he showed him last year. He's showing again. Hey, Bristol, this man can fly.
This is the first ever RDSN Wrap. Trevor Diamond joined here by Kienan Dixon. And Keenan, it is a beautiful day outside. We have no windows. We have no windows in here. So we can't really tell, but I've seen it's very nice. Not as cold as normal, so a nice Friday right before a good weekend.
Yeah, the sun is shining, and here on Red Devil Sports as Dickinson basketball is still number 4 in the country, and obviously top 5 ranking. Some big games coming up here in the next couple weeks. Those will decide who hosts the Centennial Conference tournament. Obviously, who hosts that will be huge.
Exactly, and let's start off with a bang. Let's start with the game that you went to at Gettysburg. You went with Christian Payne and Charlie McGuire, our sports who are working in our sports information department. Dickinson came away with a 72-60 victory over the Bullets to split their season series. Jerry led the team with 24 points. And what did you see from Dickinson in that game that we hadn't seen before, positive or negative?
Well, Jerry Wickstead had 24 points, obviously the All-American for the Red Devils. Teddy Henningkamp, he has been improving drastically as the season has gone on. He didn't start at the beginning of the season, but he has worked his way into the starting rotation and has played his way to a Centennial Conference Player of the Week this past week. He had 13 points and 3 assists. Dickinson was distributing the ball very well. They didn't play as many guys as they usually do, which was something that we don't usually see from Coach Soretti. But it was a solid victory for the Devils. Obviously, they lost by 7 the first time around. And so it was a good redemption win there to maintain their national ranking.
Of course, and a good win leading into a tough road slate. They take on Ursinus and McDaniel. I don't think you can talk enough about Jerry's influence this season, becoming the team's all-time leading scorer. He certainly came into it with a lot of praise, being named a preseason All-American. But we've seen it spoke in Justice Melton's interview that you can find on YouTube, on Red Devil Sports Network, or on the Dickinson Athletics channel. He talked a lot about how Jerry has mentored him, and I think that it's going to, what last year I was speaking to current RDSNer who's abroad in Bologna, Connor McLaughlin. He said, I'm not sure how they're going to do next year, losing Adam Honig and Tucker Landy, who were 2 huge components, but Jerry has really been the steady hand. But other than that, what have you noticed from maybe a youth step up? I know you said they didn't play as many guys, but just over the course of the season, what have you seen?
Yeah, Chris McNeil, obviously when we talked to Coach Soretti before the Franklin and Marshall game, Chris McNeil, he's a solid point guard. He's a solid shooter. And he's got a lot of poise when he plays. And that it really reflects in his game as he just shows his confidence. Only a freshman out there playing with the big boys, and he gets significant minutes because of that as a freshman. Also, Moses Ramaki, another one of the key freshmen that Coach already mentioned. His defense is outstanding, coming up with a couple blocks last game, just using his length. And look for him to dunk in a game if he has a nice fast break.
Well, looking ahead, the Ursinus game and the McDaniel game, while both big, those are 2 teams that have not had the season that they had hoped for. Ursinus at 5-8 in the conference, McDaniel at 7-6 was still good, but and in 4th place, trying to maybe recreate what we saw last year when Dickinson faced the Green Terror in the first round of the Centennial Conference playoffs. But after those 2 games, they return home to take on Johns Hopkins on the Redout. Of course, the Blue Jays haven't left a great taste in the Red Devils' mouth. They have won their last 2 meetings, one in the Centennial Conference Championship. Of course, at Dickinson, we like to remember that we made an Elite 8 run after that one, and they lost in the first round of the tournament. Still a great win for the Blue Jays, won on the home court for Dickinson at the Klein Center, but then they won by 13, which is an even bigger statement. It was the highest-ranked team Johns Hopkins had ever beaten at the time, and in that game they were led by George Bergerinovich, who a common name that I remember from last year calling the Centennial Conference Championship game. He's having a really great season. And Keenan, what do you think Coach Soretti is looking for in these next 3 games, really the most pivotal stretch for the Red Devils before they get into the conference tournament?
I think your sinus would be a solid game for Dickinson. I think that'll just be sort of a tune-up, preparing themselves for what's ahead. Obviously, it's on the road, but I think Dickinson will come out with the victory. I spoke with Steve Collins today, and he said he's very confident with what they have going, and he believes that they will come out with a solid win tomorrow. In regards to the McDaniel game, McDaniel beat Franklin and Marshall, we remember, by 1. Franklin and Marshall's second loss of the season. Very critical game there. McDaniel also lost to Hopkins by 3 in Baltimore. So look for that to be an interesting game there. McDaniel, I look for them to be a dark horse in the conference tournament, and they might shake some things up there. Hopkins has won 16 straight. It's an excellent win streak they have going for them. Their last loss was to Franklin and Marshall. So that'll be a huge game for Dickinson next Saturday.
And they've shot up in the national rankings, moving up to number 13. Dickinson, of course, at number 4. F&M hanging in there at 16. So the big 3 in the Centennial Conference. But there have been rumors pervading circles that maybe when it gets to NCAA tournament time, the Centennial Conference might only be throwing 1 team into the dance. And this is what a lot of people thought was going to happen last year as well. Dickinson, the clear favorite, had been nationally ranked, had struggled against F&M, but were really looking to win the tournament and get that 1 automatic bid. It actually helped the conference, though, that Dickinson didn't get the automatic bid. They got 3 teams into the tournament. They got an Elite 8 run out of Dickinson, almost looking the way that CONCACAF looked in the World Cup, where you got 1 team making a great run, Dickinson being the Costa Rica team, not really expected to do it, but still a really great team. And you have teams, Franklin and Marshall, Hopkins taking on the role of the U.S. and Mexico, still putting on really great performances. But do you think that it's possible that can happen again? Do you think they can get 3? Do you think it's going to take another Hopkins finishes number 1, but then Dickinson wins the tournament? Or do you think that just based on merit that we could see 3 Centennial Conference teams?
It's kind of disappointing to see that there are 3 top 20 teams, and there's news that only 1 might make it into the tournament. But we've been doing our research here, and obviously Hopkins and F&M played on Wednesday. That was a big game for both teams. Hopkins came out with the 50-46 win, low-scoring game there. But that win for Hopkins, had they lost that game, that would have made it a 3-way tie at the top of the Centennial Conference with both teams, or with all 3 teams with 2 losses. Hopkins still has sole possession of first place of the regular season conference leader, and F&M and Dickinson are tied. So Hopkins and Dickinson obviously next Saturday, and then Dickinson at F&M to end the season on February 21st. 2 big games right there. If Dickinson loses both games, tournament hopes, unless they win the conference tournament, will be pretty much vanished. Obviously, Hopkins, if they lose to Dickinson, it'll be a 3-way tie at the top. Looking if F&M still wins their next games. And coming up for them, they have, I believe, let's pull their schedule up here. I believe they have McDaniel one more time. Let's see, they have Washington College, Ursinus, Muhlenberg, Gettysburg, and then finish up the season with Dickinson. So 5 big games there for them. The only team I see beating F&M would be Gettysburg. The other 3 teams, obviously Dickinson. The other 3 teams do not really pose a threat there. So, I mean, all the teams need to win out to have a shot. Dickinson controls their destiny here with both games against Hopkins and F&M. And F&M is really just sitting, waiting to see what happens. They still have to win. Hopkins has to win. it's going to be an interesting race these last couple of weeks here.
I think it would be really interesting if Dickinson was able to split the series with Hopkins, because that neutralizes the head-to-head meetings, and you get to start to look at something like what we saw maybe in the Big 12, where there's in college football this year, where there's a number of qualified teams, but they can't all make it. Luckily, the Centennial Conference has a championship game, and there is a tournament of more than 4 teams. There's 62 teams, so you have to imagine that they would have a pretty good chance. However, you're right. Dickinson controls their destiny. They're in the driver's seat for the conference, even though Hopkins is in first place. They are also going to. Because they get those 2 games against the top 3, it'll be really big for them, because maybe the F&M games becomes less important. As you say, we get their schedule if Dickinson is able to beat Hopkins, but more importantly, they have the higher national ranking. And so for Hopkins, it's going to be a little bit of a proving ground game when they come here on the 14th. Where they're coming into the Klein, they're coming into a Redout game. They're coming into the first time that they've been at the Klein since they won the conference title. Their fans are going to be crazy. There's going to be prizes. It's Valentine's Day. I'm sure they're going to want to show off for their girlfriends. Same thing with Dickinson. Yeah, but you have to imagine that they come in, they're going to feel disrespected as the underranked team while they're in first place, and they've already beaten Dickinson. And so I think that's a big thing that Coach Soretti has to look for in his team, is to not get overconfident and to remember what happened. Remember when we interviewed him before the F&M game, he said after the Hopkins game, it was the best practice they'd ever had. He really needs to be able to bring that sentiment back in order for them to pull ahead and win. And they haven't lost since the Hopkins game. I think that they extended their winning streak to 7.
Yeah, they could extend it to 7 tomorrow. But yeah, he said that the day after the Hopkins game, that was the best practice he'd seen in a couple of years. And that's a huge thing. Dickinson, obviously, a lot of competitors there, with a lot of good teams these past couple of years, and just seeing the team turn it around. They have given up more than 60 points in only 2 of the past 6 games, and they've beaten every single team by double digits. So they've had command and control of all these games. They haven't really had to play from behind at all. The Gettysburg game was probably the most competitive game that I've seen. But obviously they played the number 14 team in the country, F&M, here. Mm-hmm. And F&M just got blown out of the gym. So Dickinson has played with their hair on fire and has really dominated these last 6 games. And I look for them to have a lot of success these next couple of weeks.
And the remaining schedule for the men's basketball team before we move on, as we've said, they take on Ursinus and McDaniel both on the road on the 7th and 11th before coming home for the Redout game at 4 o'clock against Johns Hopkins on the 14th. Then they will take on Muhlenberg on the 18th at 7:30 before finishing up the season at Franklin and Marshall on the 21st. Now let's move on. Were you guys able to make it for the women's game as well?
Yeah, we were able to see that. The women's team has been struggling lately, and Gettysburg, the first time around, it was both teams lost back in November, right before Thanksgiving. The women played very tight. They only lost by 7 there, and it was a very competitive game. However, this time, Gettysburg controlled the game from start to finish. Freshman Cassidy Lesher had 14 rebounds. She had 10 at halftime. We've seen her grow a lot. She played like 2 minutes a game at the beginning of the season. Now she's getting some good minutes here. Just utilizing that size and bringing down some rebounds.
And for the women, you said it's been a difficult season. They're currently 2-13 in conference, 4-16 overall, but definitely been a season of growth. It takes a while to build a really stellar program. We see it all the time. Coach Soretti didn't come in and build the men's team into a great program overnight. It's Coach Bixby's first year, and when I interviewed her, before the season, she said, we understand you can't win right away. That doesn't mean we don't want to. And And a player like Cassidy Lesher, a first year, getting a career high in rebounds, getting 14 rebounds. It's a really great game. Almost had a double-double. That's important. She has the returning Centennial Conference Freshman of the Year in Mary Martin, who's played very well. She's still got a lot of great sophomores, and so next year that team will still have a lot of experience. There's only, I believe, 2 seniors on the team, and so a lot of the same team is coming back next year, and so Coach Bixby will have a full off season with her team coming into next season, and they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think they've played really well in a lot of games this season. Of course, the Swarthmore game, Myoni Williamson hitting the big layup with 1 second remaining to beat them 48-47. That's been great. The rest of the season, they will take on Ursinus and McDaniel, similar to the men. They'll go on the road, and then on the 14th, again, the Red Out game, they'll take on Bryn Mawr. They'll have a lot of fans wanting to get the same prizes as well. So that game is at 2 o'clock before finishing the season with a non-conference game against Eastern Mennonite, and then going to Franklin and Marshall on the 21st. So that game, of course, still a rivalry game. It will be really big. They fought really hard when F&M came here on the 21st, and I think that Coach Bixby must have seen a lot from her team. They're averaging 36 rebounds a game. They have a lot of size inside that not a lot of teams have. It's not just Cassidy Lesher. Mary Martin plays like a pit bull when you get her down there. Liz Schultz, Mackenzie Scarrett. A lot of these players are really great, and then they're able to kick it out. Kelsey Walsh, a really great point guard. Ellen Bear has done a great job in her sophomore year here, and so you have to imagine that you never want to say that a team kind of puts the end to a season 4-16. They're not going to make postseason play, unfortunately, but they can use these last couple games as really growing towards next season.
Yeah, and what I've seen just watching this women's team, I've seen a lot of growth, as you said. Mary Martin, she is really a pit bull down in the paint. She only 5'6", and she's pulling down these rebounds over these 6'1", 6'2" forwards. Couple of freshmen, Murray Donahue and Cassidy Lesher, 6'1" forwards. So you're really building around this next class coming in and what you have with these freshmen. A lot of youth on this team. Look for some success in the next couple of years. Coach Bixby's first recruiting class coming in. So she's really finding the tools that she sees fit to be successful.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, she didn't know any of these players coming from Ithaca. That's a long drive. You don't get to see a lot of Carlisle basketball when you're up in Ithaca, New York, and so she didn't get to see as much, probably as maybe she would have liked. She was really coming into a really new situation, especially the way last year went. Not a great season, and so I think that Coach Bixby, as you said, she's bringing in her recruiting class next. Next year is going to be the real test. You can really see how it's going to go. She's going to have a full time to work with them. She's going to have completely new players to work with. She's going to have a lot more to bring to the table, and she'll also be more connected with the campus community. It's just going to be a much more organic situation than maybe coming in as a new coach in your first year. It's certainly. It's different coming in the men's program doing very well. You also have, she's going to be working with a new athletic director, of course, Dr. Poolman retiring this year. And so she's going to feel, I think, as a coach, more comfortable. And that's going to allow the team to feel more comfortable.
Yeah, that'll be good just all around for that program. It's tough as a coach to come in and have success immediately. We see it occasionally in the NFL or in college, but in basketball especially, you don't necessarily get the personnel that you want when you inherit a basketball team. But I think she'll be doing good with the recruiting class and everything. Obviously, bringing down her two assistant coaches from Ithaca, so she's very familiar with her system, as they are too. So just building around that system and introducing the players to that, I think it'll be very good for that team.
It can only go up for the women's team. And now moving from the old Klein to the new Klein, squash. Keenan, do you know how to play squash?
I do not.
Okay. I played squash in high school. So, actually, fun fact, the squash coach at Dickinson, Coach Sacktvey, gave my dad a lesson a couple weeks before he was hired. He coached at Brown. I played squash at Brown because we had to share a course with 4 other people. The men's and women's squash teams have gone off to a rough first season. Of course, it is only the first season coming off. The men's team lost both their New York University match and their Connecticut College matches 9-0. So they fall them to 2-11 on the season, but they have got a couple big wins. One, an 8-1 win over Bard, and a 6-2 win over Siena. Their next match on the 6th, which is today, correct? Yes. Today is my 1-year anniversary. I have that date ingrained in memory. They will take on Drexel at Drexel. Same thing. The women will go there before they will move on to the CSA Team Championships starting on February 13th. Women did win at New York University 9-0, lost 9-0. And Keenan, I know you're unfamiliar with the sport. It's definitely been a great thing to have on campus, however, throughout the year. The players have really, really taken well to Coach Sackby, to the new facilities. It will become a really great benefit to the system, although there's always going to be growing pains when you start a new program.
Yeah, the inaugural year of a program, especially of a sport like squash, it's not familiar to me. It's not familiar to several people on campus.
It's not familiar to most people.
But it's a good sport. Obviously, they're playing some tough competition, some programs that have been around for a while. So I think that the growing pains they'll grow out of them, and they'll be fine. The recruiting will step up. A couple of key players for both the men and women, freshman Nick Straczynski and freshman Stuart LeMay for the women's side. They will be good leaders of the squash program as it grows older.
And I can say from playing in high school, we had a first year when I was a freshman as well. One of my friends, he now is at Dartmouth. He played number 1 on the team, and so it's really an advantage to the coach when you have youth playing up front, because you start at the top and move down, and so you can really develop your entire team once you get the recruiting started up at that number 1 position. So it's a new program. A lot of the players walked on or weren't sure about playing, and so it'll only continue to grow once Coach Sackby has gotten on the trail. I spoke to him before the season started, and he said, he got started late. He wasn't able to schedule as much, so it's kind of been rushed, a little disorganized at the beginning, and so I think that, though, as they move on, it will get much better. And now move on to another S sport, swimming. Of course, the women's swimming team took on Gettysburg on the 4th, where they lost 117-76. The men's team lost 110-83. So not great results against the rival Gettysburg. However, shout out to RDSN member first year Mitchell Reynolds, who took, excuse me as I pull the information back up, who posted wins in both the 400 individual medley and the 500-yard freestyle against Gettysburg. Gettysburg, of course, known for having a really great swim program. So difficult outcomes for both men's and women's teams, but it's been a good season so far for both teams. The women have been doing very well. Currently sit at 8-4. Men sit at 5-6. They'll be looking to finish up the season strong. One more meet against Swarthmore for both teams before they move on to the Centennial Conference Championships. Those will be at Gettysburg. It's been a good season for swim, I would say. They've done very well, very successful, really on both sides. It's always I've always looked at swim as more of an individual sport that is also on a team. It's the same thing with squash. And so if you can continue to develop those individuals, you have a first year like Mitchell, that's really going to be your advantage.
Yeah, like we mentioned, for squash, the first year's just coming in, having immediate success. I know Mitch in his first meet, he lives a couple doors down from me. He told me, he's like, I got my first career win in a race. So just him having some success right there immediately, that's pretty big for him.
What's it like to live on a floor with a swimmer? Is there a lot of water just kind of hanging around? You guys don't have a bathtub, right?
No.
Oh, see, in KW there's a bathtub. I've showered in it. I've never taken a bath. I don't think anyone ever should. You have a lot of athletes on your floor?
No.
No? Oh, interesting. I lived with a bunch of football players, and my roommate was a baseball player last year.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, a bunch of football players, baseball player, and an actor. 2 actors, actually. Moving on now to something that kind of sounds like actor, track and field. Big meet coming up for both men's and women's track and field. The Ducharme Invitational, the only home event for both sides. It will be on February 7th. It's been a short beginning of the season. Their first meet was only on the 6th. Of course, track scheduling is a little bit kind of go back and forth, but they've done very well so far. I certainly enjoy track events. We've never broadcast one, Christian. No? We will. We will at some point. Live video. I've been to a track event before. They are very long. I was at my sister's over winter break, and I looked at my mom, and I said, now I understand why we don't broadcast these. Ooh, that would be cool. Yeah, I like that. 800 and pole vault. Let's get those on let's get those on the Sports Network. So looking at track, kind of how their season has gone. They did very well at the Bison Open, both men and women. And for the women, Amanda Jimkowski was named SAAC Student Athletic Advisory Council Player of the Week, Athlete of the Week. So congratulations to her, sophomore in my year. I've never met her before, not yet. So if Amanda, you're listening,
we might interview you one day.
Yeah, we might interview. We might have you on the podcast. Let's have a chat. So overall, Keenan, it's your first year on campus. It's been a successful winter season so far.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. Obviously, the men's basketball team really the highlight of that with their number 4 ranking nationally and just this conference race coming down to it. But it's been really exciting just to see the events, to see the school spirit here. It's a huge thing that we take a lot of pride in. So.
Yeah, and looking ahead to the spring season, all spring sports started on the 1st. Men's lacrosse will take on Cabrini in their first game on the 7th, so that'll be good. They're looking to rebound after what was a year that coaches wanted to improve upon after last season, but 2 years ago, of course, making the Final Four. Right? Final Four? Elite Eight, excuse me. It was so long ago. I was still still a high school student at that point. Women's lacrosse will take on Messiah at home on the 3rd. Looking at baseball's schedule, baseball has their first home game on the 19th when they take on Scranton, which is a local rivalry. They have a number of games in between on the road. They will go to Florida over winter break, so that will allow them to play a fair amount. Excuse me. And then looking ahead to softball as well. Softball's first home. This is the 2014 schedule. They must not have put up the new schedule yet. We do not know. We don't have the softball schedule yet, unfortunately. And then also looking ahead to tennis. Spoke to a tennis player this weekend. Schedule. Their season is looking very good. Their first home match will be March 28th for the men. And then for the women, they will have their first match on the 21st. And, of course, we'll have track events all throughout the spring. So spring season definitely looking up. You can't say enough about what Dickinson has done in recent years facilities-wise with the Durden Center, with the new Klein, with D Park being renovated. Coach Director Pullman talked a lot about that in our interview together. He's talked a lot about D Park and how it's really improved Dickinson. So overall, a good season, but also looking up. Heading towards the nicer weather.
Yeah, once we get to the more warmer days, a lot of sports will pick up, so it'll be pretty exciting every day, really, with some event going on. So we hope to see everyone out there as
wearing the red.
We will be there.
Yes.
Broadcasting and bringing everything live to you.
I have to say, I love basketball. I love broadcasting in the warm weather. You can get outside, probably in shorts. Sometimes you can take your shoes off.
See, I'm from California. You could do
okay,
that
see,
right
I
now.
don't. Well, I mean, it gets warm in Rhode Island, but I don't. Right now, it's like 30 degrees, so I don't want to do that. Although I've seen there is one student here from Rhode Island that I have seen. He's a first year. He wears shorts all the time. We have weird people like that.
It's a pretty gutsy move right there.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if his legs might turn blue one day.
I will be warmed up, wrapped up, everything.
Yeah, I was in California for winter break, and there were down parkas galore.
Yes.
So, well, that's about it for the sports. But of course, looking ahead to the Redout game on the 14th, we hope to see everybody there. Valentine's Day, prizes. Women will take on Bryn Mawr at 2. Men will look for get revenge on Johns Hopkins. It will be, you have to imagine that both teams might move up in the rankings. Hopkins probably will get into the top 10 by that point, so we could be looking at a really important matchup with not just conference stakes at 4 o'clock, but also national stakes as well.
Yeah, that the F&M game that we broadcast early on this month, in January, Centennial Conference dubbed that one of the biggest games in conference history. Look for this Hopkins-Dickinson game to be right up there next to it.
So we hope to see everybody in the Klein Center on Valentine's Day, and if not, you can watch online through Dickinson Athletics on the Red Devil Sports Network. And if you're looking for any more RDSN content, there's a number of ways you can reach us. We have a Twitter, RDVLS Sportsnet. We also have an Instagram, and brand spanking new as of last week, we have a YouTube at Red Devil Sports Network on YouTube. So check us out. There's going to be a lot of more exclusive content on there that you can't find on the Dickinson Athletics YouTube. A lot more interviews, a lot more highlight packages, fun videos involving all of us here at the Sports Network. So please check that out. Get a little bit, see what life in the life of a Dickinsonian broadcaster is like. Because one of the best things on campus.
I love it.
One of the best things on campus. Well, we thank you for joining us. We hope you turn in for more of these. Signing off, Trevor Diamond for Keenan Dixon, Christian Payne in the room with us. This has been the Red Devil Sports Network Wrap.